Top stories tonight in Y News. The Philippines records over 10,000 new COVID-19 cases in a single week, while an infectious disease expert believes it's high time to mandate COVID-19 booster vaccination for the general population. Apart from COVID-19 cases, the Department of Health reported 65,000 dengue cases in the country from January 1 to June 25, while an expert calls for dengue use to be reconsidered. Fuel companies will implement a major rollback of petroleum products this week. And the president of Sri Lanka has confirmed that he will resign after tens of thousands of protesters stormed the official's residence. Good evening, Philippines and the world. We are now reporting live from EDSA, Quezon City, and today is Monday, the 11th of June, 2022. Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the Philippines and in other parts of the world. I am William Theo. First in the news, even in the face of increasing COVID-19 cases, health experts do not recommend that the country shift to higher alert levels. Experts now urge, however, to make booster doses for the general public mandatory. Eileen Cerudo explains why.
There is a need to sustain the wall of protection in the Philippines amid the number of COVID-19 variants present globally. According to vaccine expert panel member and infectious disease expert Dr. Ron Jean Solante, the country only reached 20% of its target for booster doses.
I think it's high time that we need to mandate the booster vaccination to the general population.
This is low when compared to neighboring countries such as Malaysia, Vietnam, Singapore, and Thailand, where more than half of the eligible population has already received their booster dose. He then reiterated the need for booster vaccination in order to entice more people to get vaccinated.
Kailangan mandatory na siguro para lang ma-increase natin ang protection. Especially now we are preparing for the face-to-face classes in November and the workplaces are also open now.
Even with increasing COVID-19 cases, health experts say there is no need to increase alert levels, especially when healthcare utilization rate remains low.
Sa tingin ko, hindi natin kailangan taasan ang alert level, no? Because expected ito sa isang virus na mataas ang hawaan, tataas ang mga kaso, no? Ang importante lang dito, pataasin natin ang boosted population.
Octa Research Group also agrees not to shift to higher alert level, especially if the healthcare utilization rate stays below 50%.
Sa Metro Manila, for example, hindi natin in-expect na abot siya ng 50%, lalo na we think na sa projections natin ay pababa na yung bilang ng kaso sa NCR sometime this July.
There are 10,271 new COVID-19 cases from July 4 to 10, based on the latest Department of Health report, with the average daily cases at 1,467. This is 39% more than the number of cases from the previous week. Eileen Cerudo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Meanwhile, the Philippines has already recorded over 65,000 dengue cases from January to June 2022. This is 90% more than the cases reported during the same period last year. Rosalie Cos will tell us why.
From January 1 to June 25, 2022, there are already 64,797 dengue cases in the Philippines. The Department of Health reports that this is 90% more than the cases recorded in the same period last year. The most dengue cases were reported in Central Luzon, with more than 9,400 cases. Central Visayas has over 7,700 cases, Zamboanga Peninsula with 5,684 cases, and Metro Manila with less than 2,000 cases. Also, 274 dengue patients died during the said period, representing a 0.4% fatality rate. Amid the rising cases of dengue in the country, infectious diseases expert Dr. Ronchin Solante believes it is high time to reconsider the use of Dengvaxia, the world's first anti-dengue vaccine. He added this vaccine has already been in use in some Asian countries such as Singapore, Thailand, and Malaysia.
So I think it's high time that if in case the government should consider having the Dengvaxia, they should review the data, they should review the benefit of this vaccine, which is prevention of hospitalization and prevention of severe dengue.
The Dengvaxia controversy arose in November 2017 after its manufacturer Sanofi Pasteur announced that the vaccine may lead to more severe symptoms for those who have never been infected by dengue prior to vaccination. As a result, the Food and Drug Administration revoked Dengvaxia's product registration certificate forever. Solante, on the other hand, emphasized the importance of developing specific guidelines on when and whom to use the Dengvaxia. There is currently no approved anti-dengue vaccine in the country. Rosa Licoz, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, or NDRRMC, advises the public to be more vigilant and ready in the event of heavy rainfall, flash floods, and landslides. NDRRMC Chairperson and Department of National Defense Officer in Charge Undersecretary Jose Faustino says in a social media post that during this rainy season, the public should remain alert and be prepared for the increasing likelihood of floods and landslides. The NDRRMC will continue to strengthen its mechanisms, systems, and actions to ensure the people's safety, the official assumes. This comes after Ifugao was hit by floods and landslides after heavy rains on Thursday, while Cebu City also suffered from heavy rains and landslides. In other news, a major drop in fuel prices is set to be in effect tomorrow. The Energy Department says the good news may continue in the coming weeks. JP Nunez explains why.
The Department of Energy reported that the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC's decision to increase fuel exportation caused the oil price rollback in the country. Apart from that, countries limiting mobility due to increase in COVID-19 countries decrease fuel demand. Oil companies will impose big-time oil price rollback starting tomorrow with these factors. Companies say gasoline will be down by 5.70 pesos per liter, diesel by 6.10 pesos per liter, and kerosene by 6.30 pesos per liter. The Energy Department expects the oil price rollback to continue in the next weeks.
We carry this certain degree of optimism na pababa na yan. No? With the variables, lumabas, yung mga factors na yun, talagang pinabababa niya. No? Kaya lang itong mga factors na to are not that permanent yet.
PUV drivers, on the other hand, believe that diesel product prices should be around 40 to 50 pesos in order for them to have sufficient income for their families.
Hopefully, kung umabot sana, bumalik uli sana yan sa mga around 50, medyo maganda. Yun ang expectation namin. Sana umabot mga 54, 56, something like that. Ang basihan namin is that time na nasa 50 plus ang per liter ng diesel. Yung mga driver namin nakakapag-uwi din sila nung hindi pa pandemic, at least 900 up to 1,000 plus.
Mga 40 ganun, 40 plus ganun. Mas maganda kung nagkaganon. Sa ngayon, ang mahal talaga ng diesel, di kaya eh.
Taxi drivers who use about 20 liters of gasoline per day expect to save up to 100 pesos with the rollback tomorrow.
Sana po tuloy-tuloy pa yung pagbawas. Kasi hirap na hirap na kami sa masada, wala na kami kinikita. At mga dalawang sunod pang bawas, ayos na yun. Maut mala ng 50, okay na. Sa amin kahit sa 50 siguro, medyo may laban-laban pa kami. Pero pag ganitong nasa 80 na, tumatabla na lang kami sa bayad ng pasahero eh.
Laking bagay na rin yung bawas na yun. Sana magtuloy-tuloy na yung pagbaba, huwag na sana tumaas.
JP Nunez, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Over the weekend, thousands of Sri Lankan protesters marched around the nation's capital, Colombo, and swarmed into their leader's residence. Marvi Delfin will tell us why live. Marvi?
Kath, protesters in Sri Lanka have demanded for both of the nation's president and prime minister to resign, shifting the blame for the country's economic mismanagement to both leaders. The nation is currently facing the worst economic crisis in over 70 years as food supplies and fuels face shortages, leaving prices to inflate. And so for many months, people have had to survive with minimal food, lack of power, and fuel. To tackle this, fuel sales were limited until yesterday as supplies slowly ran out, causing a long lineup of vehicles waiting outside gasoline stations. On Saturday, the protesters also broke down President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's home security and barged into his abandoned home, making use of facilities and food available. Since then, they have declared to stay in the president's home until the government changed and party leaders and the current president resigns. Now, the Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has announced his resignation to make way for an all-party government, also announcing the resignation of President Gotabaya on July 13. Once both leaders have resigned, Sri Lanka's Parliament Speaker Mahinda Yapa Aberwadena will be appointed as the interim president, according to the Constitution. Kath?
Marvi, you mentioned that an interim president will be appointed once both leaders have resigned. How will they tackle the formation of the new government?
Well, Kath, the members of the parliament will reconvene to elect a president amongst them. However, Sri Lankan economist Murtazar Javerji expressed that the country rather needs an election for the people to trust the new government. The protesters, in fact, have been calling for changes and to take the authoritarian power away from the president. Back to you, Kath.
Thank you, Marvi Delfin, for that live report. COVID-related hospitalizations in the UK increases as a new wave of infection hits. Daily COVID-19 cases are on the rise in the United Kingdom, as well as hospitalizations caused by the virus. Based on the latest data from the Office for National Statistics, about 2.71 million people in the UK in the last week of June had a COVID infection, which is an 18% rise from the previous week. Data also revealed that 11,316 people were hospitalized in June 30, compared to 8,350 on June 23rd, with patients showing respiratory problems or delirium caused by the infection. Hospitals are also currently having issues with staffing due to absences, sickness, exhaustion, and long COVID. Highly transmissible Omicron subvariants BA.4 and BA.5 are currently the most dominant variants in the UK, which drives the recent increase in infections. We'll share more global stories with you later, but for now, back to you, William.
Thank you, Kath. The Manila Electric Company lowers the overall rate in July bills. Meralco confirms this despite an increase in the generation charge for this month. Asher Kadapan Jr. details why live. Yes, Asher, good evening. Go ahead.
Good evening, Will. The Manila Electric Company starts to implement the 21 billion peso refund adjustment to their customers as ordered by the Energy Regulatory Commission. The refund is an adjustment from a projection in power rates of the Meralco in the previous bills. It amounts to more or less 87 centavos per kilowatt hour, which will be deducted in residential customers' bills starting this month of July, according to Lawrence Fernandez, Meralco's utility economics head.
The 87 centavo refund will appear in the bills starting July and so on for 12 months or until the amount is refunded.
But Meralco records an increase in the generation charge this month. This is primarily caused by the decline in electricity supply that increased spot market prices, while the weakening of the peso to dollar exchange rate also contributed to the upward adjustment. However, the 21 billion peso adjustment that the ERC ordered the power distributor to refund to its customers will balance out the increase. About 71 centavos per kilowatt hour will be deducted from the bill of residential customers of Meralco. It is equivalent to a total of 141 pesos reduction for customers consuming 200 kilowatt hour, 212 pesos for those consuming 300 kilowatt hour, 283 pesos for 400 kilowatt hour, and 353 pesos for 500 kilowatt hour consumption. Meralco says generation charge may again increase for August. However, there is a chance that another reduction may be enjoyed by customers next month.
The amortization of April costs ay matatapos itong July. So itong July, meron tayong 13 centavo na add-on as a final installment for what was deferred in April. So mawawala siya sa August, yung 13 centavos na add-on na yun. So that's a factor that might reduce the rate for August.
Well, Meralco also clarifies that the big-time rollback in fuel prices this week will almost have no effect in their overall rate. The power distributor explains that a significant portion of their power source comes from Malampaya natural gas facility, which is based on world crude oil prices and coal prices. Will?
Yes, thank you, Asher Kadapan Jr., reporting live from Quezon City. Meanwhile, the Department of Interior and Local Government intends to raise funds to assist police officers who face intimidation from drug personalities through baseless lawsuits. Leia Ilagan explains why.
The country's fight against illegal drugs is difficult. DILG Secretary Benhar Abalos said it is because police operatives are sometimes fighting against multi-millionaire or influential personalities involved in illegal drugs activities. Some PNP officers are facing counter charges or harassment from illegal drug syndicates. That's why Secretary Abalos promised to help cops in their legal battles by starting a fundraising campaign.
Alam kong alam nyo na eksperyensya nyo to. Dahil ang kalaban natin ay pera. Kalaban natin ay mga bilyonaryo, malaking industriya ito. Pero hindi tayo papatalo dahil ito'y atin ng mga anak, mga apo at kinabukasan ng ating bansa. At hindi ako papayag ma-demoralize ang ating mga pulis. Gagawa akong sistema to raise funds.
The DILG Secretary also promised to support them in their legal predicament.
Titignan ko ito. Kung nasa lugar at tama naman, I will create a team to evaluate the evidence. Huwag kayo mag-alala. Tutulungan ko ang mga kapulisyahan. I want you never to be demoralized. Upkeep with our duty to uphold the law, to make sure that there is peace and order in our country. Yan ang gagawin natin.
War on Drugs Secretary Abalos said is not only a fight of the law enforcement unit, but also of the local government units. The former Mandaluyong mayor said he will ask the mayors and governors for help in ensuring the conviction of all arrested drug personalities. Leia Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. was called on by a coalition of youth groups to keep his promise to defend the country's sovereignty and territorial integrity in the West Philippine Sea, or WPS. The statement of the West Philippine Sea Coalition comes on the 6th anniversary of the Permanent Court of Arbitration's ruling in favor of the Philippines' claims in the WPS. The tribunal decided on July 12, 2016 that there was no legal basis basis for China to claim historic rights to resources within the sea areas falling within the 9-dash line.
We are where we are today because the Duterte government has done next to nothing. We call on President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. not to sail in the same direction as the previous administration. We challenge him to stand firm on our historic arbitral victory.
Sa pagharap niya sa China ay sabihin sa kanila na titindig siya para sa ating bansa at para sa ating mga mamamayan, na malaya ating mga mangisda na mabuhay at maghanap buhay doon, at dapat ay alisin na ang mga iba't ibang mga iligal na itinayo ng China doon sa West Philippine Sea.
The Marcos administration will increase patrol in the West Philippine Sea in the midst of the maritime dispute in the region. The government will also work for the modernization of the armed forces. Nel Maribohok will tell us why.
The Philippine sovereign patrols in the West Philippine Sea will be increased according to Deputy National Security Advisor Designate Romel Banlawi. This is part of the Marcos government's effort to protect the interest of the country in the West Philippine Sea.
We will continue our presence in the West Philippine Sea by increasing our patrol activities in the area and also improving our facilities in the area.
The West Philippine Sea is the country's exclusive economic zone in the disputed resource-rich South China Sea, of which China claims roughly 90%. Several Chinese ships have been seen in the area in recent years, resisting Philippine demands for them to leave. The Marcos administration, according to Banlawi, will push for the modernization of the armed forces to strengthen the country's capacity to defend the territories.
When it comes to strengthening our capacity to defend our territories, that means implementing the continuing modernization of the armed forces of the Philippines so that we will be able to develop a credible defense posture. But at the same time, we will strengthen our skills in diplomatic negotiations in order to advance our national interests in the West Philippine Sea.
President Marcos said during his first press briefing that his goal is to find ways to resolve the conflicts with China in the West Philippine Sea issue because he doesn't want the relationship between the two countries to be limited to the said issue. Nel Maribohok, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The United Nations Security Council is struggling to strike a deal to extend the humanitarian aid to Syria. Mavian Dog will tell us why, live. Yes, Maeve?
Kath, the United Nations failed to extend aid deliveries from Turkey to 4.1 million Syrians in the rebel-held area Idlib on Friday after two rival votes as the humanitarian mandate expired on Sunday. The Bab al-Hawa crossing at the Turkish border is the only way that UN assistance can reach civilians without navigating through controlled areas by Syria's government forces. U.S. Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield warned that without the cross-border aid inside Idlib, an entire generation is at risk and 70% of food needs would go unmet. While majority of the council members favored an extension of 1 year drafted by Norway and Ireland, Russia used its veto to defeat the measure and put forward a resolution for a 6-month extension. China was the only other country to support the Russian resolution, while the United States, Britain, and France said that a 6-month extension is not long enough to allow aid groups to effectively operate. Russia argued that UN aid operation violates Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and that more aid should be carried out from the capital Damascus across the front line, leading fears that aid will fall under the government's control. 12.4 million Syrians, or nearly 60% of the population, lack sufficient access to food, according to the UN Development Program. Kath?
So, Maeve, has this been an ongoing issue for Syria and the civilians?
Yes, Kath, the authorization of the humanitarian aid operation to Syria has long been a controversial issue, but more so this year, Kath, amid the tension between Russia and Western powers over the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Since 2014, Kath, the UN has been providing aid to Syrians through different points and areas, but Russia's veto powers over the years have reduced that to just one point at the Turkish border. Back to you, Kath.
Thank you, Maven Dog, for that live report. The citizens of Japan casted their votes as the country held the upper house election on Sunday, just days after the ex-Prime Minister Abe's death. Cherise Longbowen will give us the details live. Yes, Cherise?
Good evening, Kath. Though official results were not yet out, vote counts released so far for the upper house election on Sunday, July 10, already showed a major win for the Liberal Democratic Party, or LDP, which the ex-Japan Prime Minister Shinzo Abe belongs to, 2 days after his assassination happened. LDP has so far secured at least 63 seats, which is more than half of 125 total seats being contested. If to be joined with other pro-constitutional amendment forces, they already comprise 2/3 of the chamber's seats. The said number would be enough for the requirement to be able to amend the 1947 Constitution, which had long been aimed by ex-Prime Minister Abe. Meanwhile, the late ex-Prime Minister was honored today, Japan's highest decoration, for his accomplishments during his service to the country.
He's made a great achievement, specifically as a Prime Minister. He made a great contribution for the exchanges with various countries and the U.S. and also the diplomacy and the security. As a Chief Cabinet Secretary, he also made a great achievement and contribution, and also as a lawmaker.
The said election also saw a record high win for female members who secured a total of 35 seats, almost 30% of the total seats elected. Back to you, Kath.
Thank you, Cherise Longbowen, reporting live from Japan. Canadians were outraged by Rogers Communications' internet outage last Friday, complicating the company's chances of getting antitrust approval for its $20 billion Canadian dollar merger. Beverly Saison will tell us why.
Some of the effects of the Rogers network outage in Canada includes cutting banking, transport, and government access, limiting cashless payment systems in Air Canada's call center. Millions of Canadians could not call 911, hospitals unable to call their staff, and families unable to call their loved ones at the end of life. This led consumers and opposition politicians to call on the government to allow more competition and enact policies as Rogers, BCE Incorporated, and TELUS Corporation control 90% of the market share. New Democratic Party leader Jagmeet Singh stated in a TikTok video that he has launched a petition to halt Rogers' merger plans to stop these monopolies.
The impact of this outage makes it clear this monopoly cannot continue. To make matters worse, Rogers wants to merge with Shaw, which will only make the monopoly worse and any future outages even more devastating. If you agree, we need to stop the Rogers-Shaw merger and we need to break up these monopolies.
2 days before the outage, Rogers held talks with Canada's antitrust authority after it blocked its $20 billion Canadian dollar takeover of Shaw Communications. The disruption could prompt the Competition Bureau to scrutinize the company's quality and service. University of Ottawa professor Michael Geist stated that this must be an indicator that the government needs to act on a digital policy. The outage began 4:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Friday and was restored Saturday. Rogers stated it was caused by a router malfunction after maintenance, adding they would credit the affected customers and invest more on its network and technology. This was the second interruption in 15 months, which was due to an external software update. Beverly Saison, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
And those are the reasons behind the news in other parts of the globe. I'm Kat Tumaraos, live from Bangkok, Thailand. Good evening.
A teachers group called on the Department of Education or DepEd to defer the opening of classes until September. Janice Inhente will tell us why.
School classes end on June 24 according to the Department of Education school calendar for the school year 2021-2022. Teachers, on the other hand, must complete their work by July 1. According to some teachers, school activities for teachers are currently running even if there are no classes. Many of these, such as graduation and completion ceremonies, as well as forms, reading, and document preparation for the performance rating, have not yet been completed.
Marami pang pending kaming tinatapos, mga forms, yung mga RPMS. So, kailangan namin i-comply yun. So, bagamat June 24 yung itinakda na end of the school year, kaya lang, hindi rin naman namin pwedeng iwanan yung mga nakabinbin na responsibilidad. Kaya, kailangan namin na tapusin yun.
Sa ngayon kasi wala pa kaming bakasyon. As you can see, andito pa kami sa school, nagsasabit ng napakarami naming mga submission. So, para makapahinga naman kaming konti, sana at least September. Kahit paano ng konti, para fresh naman kami sa bagong pagpasok ng school year.
That is why some teachers asked the Education Department to move the start of classes to mid-September in order for them to have enough rest physically, emotionally, and mentally before the class resumption. Teachers, unlike other employees, do not have sick or vacation leave, which is why, according to the Teachers Dignity Coalition, they are entitled to 2 months leave as a rule.
Papapasoon ka kagad ng August, hindi pa. Between July 8 and August 22, tignan po natin yung kalendaryo natin. No? May school inset, may division inset, may brigada eklabu, di ba, na ginagawang contest. No? Ano pa? IPCRF, reading ng forms, etc. etc. Sa suma total, wala na tayong natira po, no, para sa atin.
President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. said earlier that Education Secretary Sara Duterte wants full implementation of face-to-face classes in November, but the first phase will begin in August. But some schools are still unready for in-person classes.
At this very moment, marami pong mga ginagawa yung mga teachers, yung mga forms na kailangang tapusin. So I don't think kayang magsimula na ng August. So kailangan pang mag-prepare yung mga teachers din. And yung mga facilities kailangan i-prepare. September talaga pwede na yun.
UNTV News tried to get DepEd's comment on this teacher's call, but they have not made a statement so far. Janice Inhente, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Our Kasangbahay, as the world faces these trying times amid the pandemic caused by coronavirus, we are inviting everyone to join the global prayer for humanity from Monday to Friday, 9:30 p.m. Philippine time through the social media accounts of Members Church of God International. And before we close, we will leave you with a word giving glory to God from the book of Proverbs, chapter 22, verse 9. It says, "He that hath a bountiful eye shall be blessed, for he giveth of his bread to the poor." And those are the reasons behind the news, July 11, 2022. Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold, and because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.